plan participants, which would be employees and family members, high quality primary care, behavioral health, and telehealth services. It's going to also have a lab and a pharmacy. We'll have about 120 different pharmaceuticals available for our employees and participants, and basic lab services will also be provided. So I think that's some really good news. Even better news is that those services are provided at zero cost to the employee or the plan participant, and no copays, no coinsurance. So we're excited about that. Very significant development for us. A couple of other items I wanted to mention. COVID vaccinations. Under the Cherokee Nation distribution plan, our employees are eligible to receive vaccination once they qualify under the different tiering systems that the nation has set forth. That's true whether they're a Cherokee Nation citizen or a citizen of another Native American nation. That's those of us 55 and older have already received an email from the health services, Cherokee Nation Health Services, and notifying us that we're eligible to schedule an appointment. And as employees become eligible under the distribution plan, they will also receive a similar email. I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have. I'm going to anticipate maybe an Arkansas question. I have a little update there, but let me put that on hold until you all request.
I'm just curious, did I miss the expected opening date of that CNB Health Clinic, or did you give it?
It's March 30th. That's the target opening day.
Chuck, is the health clinic there, is that going to be under the umbrella of the Cherokee Nation Health admin over here? And also, can you give roughly how that's going to be staffed, how many docs you're going to have, how many support people, just roughly?
You bet. Great question. No, it is not going to be staffed by the Cherokee Nation Health Services. We contracted with a company here in Tulsa that has a network of clinics both here in Oklahoma and across the nation, Care ATC. This particular clinic, so there'll be all of our employees and plan participants are eligible to go to any of those clinics. The staffing, we're going to have one full-time physician, one full-time patient advocate, and one full-time RN and one full-time medical assistant. So roughly four professionals that will be providing the care to our participants.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Buzzard?
Chuck, I think that you've answered probably the question I was going to ask. It sounds like it is for CNB employees only. Is that correct to say?
And their family. And so plan participants, which include family members.
Okay.
Immediate family members. It's not cousins and aunts and uncles, but your kids and your spouse.
Their immediate family is what you're saying then.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's right.
I suppose I don't know, just some questions. I suppose the medical facility or personnel that you're going to be putting in there are going to be able to bill insurances and stuff that the patient has.
Yes, the interesting thing about that, Counselor, is that we're self-insured. So while we have insurance, we ultimately pay the cost of the healthcare service. So we're going to track it through UMR, which is the third-party billing system that we use, but we're going to be, in effect, paying it directly. So
Okay.
it'll be
That's interesting. That's the first time I've heard or seen some of this done, but that's good. I'm glad we're doing something like that, and I think, I don't know, maybe the nation is a little behind because we don't have a clinic there in that particular area. I think the next one is probably Oshaleta, and the next one is to go to Claremore. So I don't know. This may be something to work in. That's going to work out. So good luck.
well. Thank you very much. We're really excited about it, and like I said,
Thank
it
you.
has been
Thank you.
talked about for many years. So thank you.
Okay, Chuck, I don't see any more questions, so why don't you go on with the next part of your report?
All righty. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, just a minute. Counselor
Oh.
Shaw, did you have something for Mr. Garrett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chuck, would you go ahead and update us on the status of the casino in Arkansas? What are we going to do?
I sure would. Happy to do that. As I mentioned last month, we have 3 different cases in different courts in Arkansas, all making their way through the slow wheels of justice. There was one significant development yesterday. The Arkansas Racing Commission met, and I think a very positive outcome for us. They entered into the record about 1,400 pages of emails, several invoices, as well as the consultant's report that they engaged to evaluate the 2 applicants. You might recall that that consultant decided or determined that C&B was the most qualified of the 2, more qualified of the 2 applicants in each of the 4 areas of the criteria areas. So we were glad to have that in the record. Also, the Arkansas Supreme Court has reached a decision. They have not announced the decision, and hopefully that will be next week, regarding one of the cases that we have been pursuing. Not to get into the weeds, it's a motion for intervention, and it has other implications. But we're continuing to feel very positive about the case we have, in part because of that consultant's report. The commission, just to refresh your memory, the commission hired a consultant that actually is a gaming expert to evaluate the 2 applications. And as I said, in each of the 4 categories, he deemed C&B to be the superior candidate. And so we think that's ultimately going to make a big difference in the final decision. That's really the latest, greatest.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any more questions here. Chuck, did you have something other than that to bring us up to date on?
No, ma'am. That concludes my report. Happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, hang on just a minute. Counselor No Fire has a question.
Okay.
So whenever you're bringing up to speed on the Pope County permit, so the awarded of the casino permit in Pope County to Gulfside, how is that? Is that one of the lawsuits I guess we attacked, or is that one that?
They all kind of relate. They all relate to that decision. One is an appeal of that decision directly under the Arkansas Administrative Law Act, and then there are other procedural related issues as well. So all of which are pending, all of which are have been briefed and submitted.
Okay. And then I had a citizen ask a question, because I know last year was a very a year for the ages, I'm sure, that people will be writing about. And that was a tough year, I'm sure, for you guys and everybody. I know CNB, we paid bonuses to our employees, did we not?
Yes,
Did we pay bonuses? Did our executives receive bonuses?
yes.
Okay. That was kind of a concern I had on that point, just because being the shareholder, I don't have the figures in front of me. I guess will that come in a future report of what the overall dividend from last year was, or will that be coming up in the next fiscal year on where we received it at? How those numbers kind of roll out?
Yeah. One thing to be very clear about, CNB made good on its commitment for a dividend payment to the dollar.
Okay,
So there was no reduction in the budgeted dividend committed by CNB. Okay, so that didn't happen. With regards to the particular compensation that we paid, that went across the board from all of our employees.
right.
And that, as you know, makes a big difference to Cherokee families wherever they are in the organization, and a big impact to the Cherokee Nation economy. That's a very significant impact to all of us.
Well, I do agree. I really appreciate that you guys were able to figure out how to get those employees a bonus, because I know I've heard people call and they were so appreciative that they got that in a rough year that they had to work with their families, had to stay home. However, you guys had to figure it out to get those employees back to work. They were really appreciative of that, so I'm glad that those employees got that. So, all right, well, keep us up to date on the Arkansas deal. I get reports from the Arkansas Times, and who knows what they're putting out. They're saying, oh, Gulfstream gets a permit one day, and we have a lawsuit pending the other. So appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
You're quite welcome. Thank you, Council.
Counselor Crittenden.
Yeah, just real quick, Mr. Garrett, I was just gonna point out too, great that the employees got their bonuses, great, because, that figures into CNI, which is in the heart of where I live, and, bonuses, and, some hazard pay thrown in there, and some, and a lot of those employees, they were well taken care of, by, we sent the elders home, with pay, and, a lot of the high risk, not everybody, but a lot. So that's worth pointing out, when we're talking about the bonuses, and if the dividend, it was what you told us you was gonna give us. So I just wanted to point that out and reiterate there's a lot of folks that call me that's grateful how you guys handled that, pandemic that nobody planned, nobody wanted, but, on the phone with you and your staff almost daily throughout it. And a lot of us would call you on it. I would if I thought, your heart was on that phone every time, and a lot of my folks appreciate that, so appreciate it.
Well, thanks very much, and believe me, on behalf of all of us at CNB, we appreciate the support that the council provided, the administration provided. It really meant a lot.
Okay, is there anything further from anybody on the council? All right, Chuck, I'm gonna cut you loose.
All right.
See you
Thank
next time.
very much. Okay.
Okay, I saw Trey outside. Let's give her a minute to get inside.
It is not confidential, Speaker.
I wonder if Counselors Shaw and Coates can see this slideshow presentation. Well, I'm more concerned about Shaw and Coates because there's some really good stuff in there for the at-large people.
As you can see, I've handed out the report on the Coronavirus Relief Fund, but I guess before we hop into that, you guys have my regular monthly report as well. And I just wanted to brag on my department a little bit. Even in the midst of a pandemic and more work than I think any of us have ever seen in our lives, I'm not exaggerating. If you look on page, I think 3 or 4 of that report, we received the Government Finance Officers Association, or JFOA as a lot of people refer to it, the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the Cherokee Nation for its comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2019. It says the report's been judged by an impartial panel to meet high standards of the program, and that we meet the spirit of full disclosure in all of our reporting. So that was kudos to them. We also received, if you remember a few months back, pretty much the same award from JFOA, but for our budget as well. So for our budgeting and our reporting, we've won awards for 2019. Other than that, I can answer any questions that you guys have on my regular report before we go into the other one.
Trey, since you brought it up about your employees, I want to bring it up about you. I got a call a couple of weeks ago, and I won't say who it was from, but it was about you, and they were telling me that you've been working 12 to sometimes 16-hour days, maybe longer, and been away from your family. And I know at one point there was a lot of deadlines that we thought that we were going to have to be up against, and luckily those got extended. But you have done an outstanding job as a treasurer so far, and especially getting thrown right into the fire in the middle of a pandemic. And I mean, already just looking through these things gives you chills whenever you start looking county by county on how much we were able to do for our citizens throughout the 14 counties and throughout the United States. And man, I really appreciate you being a good steward of our funds, of the Cherokee People's funds. And I know that sometimes as the leader, you don't get a pat on the back, but I appreciate you. I know your staff appreciates you, and just thank you.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to hear. I appreciate that, Counselor. Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Buzzard?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Before Trey Lene starts on her report, I just, and maybe she can clear this up, and maybe it will be cleared up. I want to tell you a little bit about one of my constituents who lives in Delaware County. It's kind of a story. It's kind of a success story, actually. Got a young guy, probably in his late 30s. He had caught chickens for probably 25 years, 20 years. He's probably 40, 45. Well, back in, I believe it was February, March, he caught for Simmons Company out of Arkansas. Simmons has started to contract all the chicken catchers as a contract, not as an employee. So this young man, I don't think he's full-blood, but he went out, he came to me and asked, Harley, how can I get funding to start my own business? Because if I don't, the people from south of us is going to get all the business. So he wanted to get in there because he's done it for 20 years. So I tried to help him as much as I could. And this young man had probably saved up $10,000 or $15,000 of his own money to start his business. So he had to go out and he bought him a big truck, bought a big trailer, bought a big loader to load the chickens on the truck. And I don't know what he borrowed, probably $100,000, $120,000. This young man employs probably 7 or 8 full-blood Cherokee Indian boys with families. Now Simmons has cut his production back. They don't take as many chickens, so he doesn't catch as many chickens that he did prior to this. So what he's trying to do now is trying to take money out of his profits to make sure his catchers have enough money to live on. He said, well, what can I do? How can he help me, Harley? And I said, well, first of all, I thought he could go to the state of Oklahoma, the PPP program, to get money, and it's a loan forgiveness program to the federal government that the state administers. Well, he said, I've done that. He said, I went up there and asked and told him I need help because I'm going to go under because I don't catch enough chickens to make the payments and on my equipment, pay my people. Well, the thing of it is, they told him he had to be in business for 1 year, but he hadn't been in business probably 10 months, 8 months. So the next thing, I said, well, check with our loan program here at the Cherokee Nation. They said, well, I checked there, and they said that they don't have a PPP program, that the only thing they can help me with is a loan. And he said, right now, I don't need another loan because I'm barely can't make the loan that I've got. And so I said, well, let's check with the nation itself about our reliefs. And he checked with that, and maybe the report that Tara is going to give us can tell us why we aren't helping him. I do understand, and I've thought about this a lot because I used to do this poultry business myself. Maybe there's just too many people that's in the poultry business that you can't help because they don't raise enough chickens to make their payment. But this young guy has went out and took his own savings that he had and borrowed the money, and now he's about to go under. So I just want to tell you this story. Those are 7 or 8 full-blood Cherokee families that he supports, and now they're struggling. I think they would probably all qualify for the relief funds that we have now, and I've asked them to apply for it, but he's in a different predicament because he has a $100,000 loan or more. So anyway, just something to think about, and maybe Tara, her report can address this issue. So just want to put it out there and let you know that I think the Cherokee Nation, I think all the tribal council members here are supportive of young Cherokees that has their own business. And he stuck his neck out and did this, and now he's hurting and he can't make his payments, or he can't make them and stay in business. If it keeps going like this, he'll be out of business. So anyway, maybe that what you can give a report on, Mike, can tell us why we can't do that. I can understand why we probably can't, because if you look at the chicken business, I'm sure there's several native-owned businesses that has chicken poultry productions, and they're selling less chickens. But this is just a story about some young Indian guy. So anyway, just want to put it out there and let you be aware of what's happening to a young man in my district up there. But anyway, thank you. You're doing a good job, and I appreciate the work that you're doing over there. Thank you.
Okay, anything else before she reports on the coronavirus relief fund? Okay, go ahead, Trey.
Okay, thank you. So you guys, as you can follow along with the handout, this first slide gives an overview of the coronavirus relief funding that we have received to date from the federal government. And the total is the $544 million. This report goes over specifically the coronavirus relief fund, which is that top line that's highlighted there, where we received $410,906,001 for this fund. The other funding came with, I won't say more restrictions, because there were quite a few restrictions on this funding, but they were more like for a direct purpose, so our IHS money, a lot of it was for testing and stuff like that. So we, of course, spent those funds as they were prescribed by the funding agency. This next slide shows the budgeted CRF spend by program, and what I'm calling program are some large kind of categories of types of spending here. And that gives it the dollar amount by program, and the next slide gives the percentage of those programs as a percent of the 400, we'll call it 411 million. And anybody feel free to stop me and ask any questions as I kind of walk through this. The next one,
Trey, just a minute. I have a question on the payroll portion of it. That is not just administration of this fund. That would include all those staff that help to administer these programs. Am I correct?
yeah, are you asking about the 177 million? Yes.
Okay.
That includes a lot of employees, and that's actually the first one we'll get into. And I think I might answer your question on
Oh, okay.
one more slide over.
Okay, I'll hold it till the end then.
There's a slide in there just showing that we only have 0.23% that's not encumbered or committed at this point. So most of the money is spent and/or in the process of through payroll or has otherwise been spoken for. And then I think this next slide is the one that's probably going to answer your question, Counselor. So the payroll, as you guys can see, was the largest percentage of the spending that we did at 42%. It was 177 million. And that was, that covered payroll for over 8,200 employees. And that's a mixture of Cherokee Nation employees and CNB and CNE employees. And there's also included in there the hazard pay that we paid. I will say that the majority of the employees for the nation were our healthcare employees. We were able to pay the healthcare salaries with that. But I think, we made it, Chief made it a priority that we, not lay anyone off, not reduce anybody's salary, but at the same time also give them the opportunity to be on admin leave or work from home if they had underlying conditions and stuff to keep them safe. So we were able to do that, and I'm happy to say that no employees were laid off or missed a paycheck because of this pandemic. The next program we jump into is the individual assistance, which is the second largest program that we administered. It's for a total of 54 million, and that's 13% of the overall fund. And you can see this first slide is a summary of what you'll see on the next few slides. But it's, like I said, 54 million, and we served over 132,000 citizens with direct payments. So $54 million will go directly to citizens who are in need due to COVID-19. The next several slides here show each of those programs broken down by county. I couldn't do it by district because, as you guys know, some of the districts cut through different zip codes and stuff. So the best I could get it down to was the county level. So as you said earlier, Councilor Taylor, we were able to do a lot for the at-large, which we really were, and this was one of the first times that we've really been able to do that and have that leeway with our funding and kind of creating our own programs so that we could do that. So I know that there were several who called up and said, this is the first time I've ever, received anything from the tribe because I live outside of the jurisdiction, and or outside the reservation, and they were very excited about that.
So I was gonna point out on the elder safety. Now that's every elder who applied
Correct.
got this.
Correct.
And
Yeah, we'd actually budgeted a little more money than that in that fund. I expected more, and we didn't have as many apply as we had anticipated.
Right, but I mean, it's safe to say for anyone watching, on every elder that applied, got $400.
Correct. I mean, as long as their citizen ID was right and, you know,
Yeah, right. And
the
then,
application was, complete.
then in the county over here, that shows who got the 1,200, who qualified for the 1,200 in
Yeah.
each county, right?
Yeah,
The elder
and-
utility.
you can see on the bottom line there, it says average per citizen. So it was up to $1,200. If they didn't have, if their utility bills weren't all the way up to $1,200 for, you know, a certain month, we just paid as much as they needed. So that's
Right.
why that average per citizen is a little less than the 1,200. But the elder safety payments were just $400 flat payments to everyone who applied. And qualified, I guess, you know, if you were between the age range and that kind of stuff. One thing I wanted to point out on slide 9, under the emergency assistance, you see that total there, which is just under 3 million. And I wanted to notate that that does not include the 7 million that was put into that fund when it reopened on January 25th. So the 54 million includes that 7 million that we've put into that fund, which is why the total here is a little bit lower, because this is actual spend to date. If you guys don't have any questions on those other two, we can go to the economic relief program, which is slide 12. So this was the what are we on, the third largest program? Which is the Cherokee Nation COVID-19 Economic Relief Program. There are some sub-programs under this larger program. One was to the tribally owned businesses. There were actually 3 different sub-programs for the Cherokee community organizations. There was a CCO capital grant for them to make capital improvements to their buildings. A lot of what they did with that funding was expand their food distribution. So they bought like walk-in coolers and, you know, other equipment, kitchen equipment that they needed to be able to expand their food distribution. There was also a CCO operations grant, which was a grant that helped fund their operating expenses due to the business interruption. And their business interruption was the fact that they couldn't hold their fundraisers, right? So they've lost their revenue stream. So we helped them out with their fixed operating expenses that way. And then finally, there was also an at-large CCO grant that went out for the at-large CCO groups to help mitigate COVID with their meetings and such. There was also another program called the Community Partners Grant. This was for those organizations that weren't CCO organizations, but were still, you know, nonprofits and were working hand in hand with the Cherokee Nation to, you know, help citizens, Cherokee citizens and citizens of Northeast Oklahoma alike. A lot of those were food banks. We funded a lot of food banks through that program. And you know, we did, I think, United Way and a couple of other of those groups that were really getting out there in the community and trying to help people. And then the Boys and Girls Clubs also. They've been a tremendous asset, as it turns out, through this pandemic. They've done a really good job because they stayed open and they took kids when schools were closed and parents had to work. So the Boys and Girls Clubs really stepped up and I think helped a lot of families through this. And then to C&B, we gave the $39 million to Cherokee Nation businesses, and I wanted to point out that the majority of that, I think like 31 million of that 39 was incurred during those months when they were shut down. So per the guidance, because it was a mandatory closure, we were able to give them economic relief with our funding because of the business interruption, the business closure. So during those months that they were closed, we paid their fixed operating expenses, and then their payroll too. Their payroll was on that different slide over there. But when they opened back up in March, that program shrunk back down to just reimbursement for their very COVID-specific expenses. A lot of that was their responsible hospitality program that they have up and running at all the casinos. And then this next slide shows, I kind of wanted to show and highlight why it was so important to keep Cherokee Nation businesses as financially healthy as possible. And as you can see on that slide, I think it's slide 13, it shows their contributions to the nation since FY11. And year over year, they just seem to be kind of giving more and more contributions to the nation, and I think that's a sign that the business is strong and growing. But also wanted to point out that it is not just their statutory dividend that they give, which is the 37% of net income. They also have what I kind of refer to as reoccurring contributions to the nation, which are a lot of the MOUs that are in place, like for them to provide they provide a portion of the funding for the Marshal Service because the Marshals are at the casinos so often. They also help out with some of Miss Kelly's programs with the, I think it's career readiness, but I could be wrong about that one. But anyway, so things like that where they offer year-over-year funding. And then there are the capital contributions, which over these, since 2015 kind of onward, was really mostly the healthcare facilities, where they would build the healthcare facility, and then once it was built and complete, they gave that to us as a dividend. So they dividended. It was a dividend of an asset, a capital asset that went on our books. So I think that's important to show why it was in our best interest to, do as much as possible for our businesses, because it will pay for itself probably within about a year. The next program was the PPE and safety. So this consists of a couple of different parts here. And I don't know if Mr. Enlow's here or not. He may want to speak to this if I can't answer some of your questions. But so a portion of this, you'll see about $4 million was what we actually purchased in PPE. So the masks, the gowns, the face shields, these barriers, all that kind of stuff that protected the employees and the citizens. And then another portion of that was where we are actually investing in our own PPE manufacturing. We will have two buildings where they run these operations. It's Stillwell and Halbert. And the reason that the Stillwell building, you can see that it costs significantly more than the Halbert building, is because of the size of the building. And that's because of the size of the machine that has to go in there. That's our, I'm sorry, Todd, I'm going to say it wrong. It's our airflow machine. It's the big machine that's really long. He knows the name of it.
Yeah. So in Stillwell, we'll have several mass make machines, 3-ply as well as N95. The one that we haven't released to the public as of yet, but I'm going to go ahead and share this with you now because it'll be in Stillwell, Oklahoma in the coming days and week, is an N99 machine. So an N95 is supposed to filter out 95% of the particulate matter, and by design and certification by FDA and NIOSH, every medical provider should replace that mask with every patient encounter. because of the shortfall of supply in the United States, most hospitals across the United States, some of those staff were repurposing those and using them for the entire week. And that puts that actual healthcare worker in jeopardy because it's not working as effectively. An N95 mask will filter out 99% of the particulate matter, and we will have one of the only machines to produce N99s in the United States. And with President Biden's executive order for buying American, it will place us in an advantage to help supply masks not only for Cherokee Nation and our clinical operations, the hospital, but potentially other tribes, other states, as well as the federal government. So the air handler system, there's certifications that we have to meet with FDA and NIOSH to be able to have these masks certified to supply and filter out. And so a large chunk of that investment is strictly for the air handlers. We have to turn over the air in that space so many times and create a positive pressure environment. So that's why the Stillwell operation, it is in the old Walmart. It's about 27,000 square feet. About 85% of that total square footage is actually the ISO level 7 to create that safe environment for production of masks. Because we have to, you can imagine if this mask is going to protect people, it's got to, once it comes off our line, it's got to be clean and it's got to be sanitary for individuals to use. So I have tons more information. It's probably more than you ever want to know about mask making, but that is some of the things that are going on. And we hope in the next 2 weeks that we'll start producing our first mask off of both of those lines. Thank you.
So the next several slides here are just pictures of, well, actually, I guess it's only 2 on this one. So there's a picture of the Holbert PPE manufacturing facility, and then a picture of the Stillwell one as well. The next program is improving connectivity, and that was $27 million and 7% of our coronavirus relief fund, and that was made up of a couple of different areas here. So there's the distance learning aspect of it, where we provided funding to public schools and public universities that were within the jurisdiction or adjacent to it. So for the schools, we use the same list that we do with the car tag revenue for those 107, I believe. And then we also are making some investments in Cherokee language educational series and a Cherokee language app. As you guys know, unfortunately, we were in a great place prior to the pandemic with the age of our speakers and losing speakers monthly. And the pandemic has made that increasingly worse. We are at a critical spot with our language that we needed to get some investments in more technology that will facilitate that learning of the language. We also invested $15 million in our telework and telehealth. And we've done some really neat things there. I say we, IT, I give the credit to IT, has done some really neat things there. Obviously that consists of purchasing laptops and cell phones and the stuff that we just have to be able to work from home. Along with that, we needed to upgrade our security, cybersecurity with those things. So we were kind of beefing that up with some dual authentication and everything else. But we also have a product called Salesforce that we're implementing, and I'm not sure if Mr. Gord is on the call or not. I can take my stab at explaining it, but please note that I am not an IT person. But Salesforce, we initially got it and brought it on really for our health, for the healthcare. It has some really good contact tracing type abilities and some other kind of diagnostic, I guess, capabilities within health. And we quickly saw the usefulness of that program across the nation. So this will be a software where every citizen can go in and create their online profile. So you can go in, and you'll submit your name, your birth date, your citizen ID. Registration will verify you as a Cherokee citizen. And then it's our goal to, through that, have our main communications with all of the citizens through that communication, so that we can, it'll be easier to apply for assistance. It'll be easier to see, what assistance is available and what you might qualify for. It'll also be a thing where we can, the citizen can tell where their application stands in the process, and you can easily communicate back and forth instead of, trying to search down a phone number or trying to search down something else. And I will say, it's a bit of a selfish motivation too, because it will be much easier for us to process those applications through, when they come through that, than on the platforms that we were using now.
Will the Housing Authority be able to be a part of that portal too, or is that just going to be on the nation side?
I don't see why they could not. Yes.
I am here, and just wanted to say you did a great job of explaining the Salesforce platform. But yes, we're working with Housing Authority right now to be able to provide access, again, a very secure process and only access that they would be able to see certain information that is approved through the vetting process, if you will.
Okay, this is Todd.
Correct.
Oh, okay. That's good, because a lot of times our citizens don't understand that that is actually a separate thing. And so to have it be seamless, at least from their perspective, is a good thing. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I think another great thing that this will be able to do for us is allow us to send out, kind of mass communications more. Not that we want to flood anybody's inbox, but, if there's an important announcement that needs to go out, it'll be a place where we can do that easily instead of having multiple lists of people. And then it will also save a lot of money too on mailers, because right now we, each year, it's not on people's priority to update their address with the Cherokee Nation, so we'll send mail and it will inevitably be returned, which is, not the greatest use of funds, so if we can find a cheaper way to communicate with the folks, that's always a positive. And then the last sort of group I have in there is our access to broadband. We've done a couple of different initiatives there, one of which was the AT&T hotspot devices. We bought 9,000, I believe. 9,000 of the Wi-Fi devices that have a year of service that come with them. And we got those to provide to, the priority was for students who live in an area that doesn't have access to internet, so that they would be able to do their distance learning. And that program was a pretty good hit. We've also done some, I think they're getting really close to completion actually, some Wi-Fi drive-up hot zones and they're at various community buildings throughout the reservation where people can just pull into the parking lot and they can stay in their vehicle, they can stay socially distanced from everyone else, but they have a secure network that they can get on and do what they need to do, whether that be school or work or what have you. And then we've are working with Lake Region to try to bring that cable fiber to more homes. That's It's not the easiest, not the fastest, not the quickest way, but it really is kind of the best way to increase access to internet throughout the reservation, is to get that cable in the ground. Next program is our food security program. And that was an investment of $27 million, and that also is the 7% of the total. And we did a couple of things here. So first of all, before we even got the Coronavirus Relief Fund money, it was back in March when we kind of hit that critical point and sent people home and things started to get pretty bad. And we were looking from which gen fund we could pull money from just to go buy food. And in total, we bought an additional $2 million worth of food. And I say additional, that's in addition to what we were getting from the USDA already. And when we did finally get the CARES Act passed, the CARES Act also increased what the USDA was providing. So, if you call our normal, the baseline, we got a bump in our USDA, and we put another $2 million into that additionally. And we've delivered over 38,000 boxes of food to families since March. So that's a tremendous effort, and I know that a lot of you guys had a really big hand in that with holding the events in your communities. So you should be commended for having done that. And the other thing we did was, we kind of set up a complete food supply chain. So there were a couple of things that were priorities, and I'm going to kind of go backwards here, but, we knew pretty early on that this was going to be a very serious pandemic, and that it wasn't going to go away on December 30th, even though the money was. So we were thinking about the things that we needed most, and that's healthcare, food security, and PPE. So, and you saw on the payroll where we made the investment in our healthcare to, using that money for payroll and salaries to make sure that especially our healthcare workers, could stay on the job. And then with the PPE, we invested in our own mask making equipment so that, if we didn't get any more relief funds from the federal government, that'd be okay because we could still make our own masks. Or if there was another, huge run on the masks and no one could find them, we'd still be okay because we could make our own masks. We could protect our people ourselves. And then the other part is the food security. So we kind of took that same approach with the food security. And that starts with the property in Sequoia that we purchased. And that property serves multiple purposes, but one of the purposes is as a hunting and fishing land. So the land out there is bountiful with deer and squirrels and probably wild hogs even, and all kinds of creatures that you can hunt. There's also 2 large ponds where you can fish, and then a plethora of vegetation as well for food sustenance. So it goes from, you kind of start with the property. You can, if you go out there, you shoot a deer, then we have our own, or we will have our own meat processing plant. So, and I know that it's, will have its own kind of section for processing deer, or there'll be some mechanism for people to be able to process deer there as well. And then, from the meat processing plant, sort of the next thing we did was invest in additional warehouse space. We've got warehouses here in Tahlequah, but we were lacking in space on the northern portion of our reservation. So that's the building in Owasso, the multipurpose building in Owasso. And in fact, as of yesterday or today, it's stocked with food and PPE up there now. So that's a strategic point where it can go from that warehouse to the community organizations in the northern portion of the reservation and get to the folks faster. And, we also bought some new refrigerated trucks, so the transporting the food to and from these various points is easier. And then we finally made a big investment in our food distribution centers. We constructed 5 new distribution centers, and we also, a lot through our CCO grants I spoke of earlier, made investments to upgrade and expand existing food distribution centers. So that's, that was the thought process and the decision-making behind that. It was a way to strengthen our position. If we didn't receive any more funding from the federal government, we had to always try to plan strategically like that, make ourselves as self-sufficient as possible. So the next several slides here just are pictures of those food distribution centers and the meat processing plant. And then when you get to slide 26, it's the next program. And that is the public health infrastructure. This was largely, these were capital investments in various areas that needed, we either needed more of or needed it to be in better condition to meet the new, I'll call them the new safety requirements, for everyone. So there were 3 buildings that we either built or acquired, or remodeled, I guess, too, so that we can start to bring some of our folks back into the office, but safely. I will tell you that finance is that's one of the hardest things about finance right now, is that in my building, there are no cubicles, they're all actual offices. And we've grown so much over the years that now there's, in almost every office, there's 2 people per office. And with this going on, they can't be in the office in the same day. So it's always this rotating schedule. And, while they are doing their best and they are getting a lot of work done at home, there's just some things you can't do at home. Like if you need to pull a journal entry out of the vault, you can't do that from your house. So it's slowing us down for sure. So these are more buildings where we can bring the employees back, where they can remain safely, physically distanced from each other, but sort of, get back to the rhythm of things. We were building 2 new employee clinics, one in Catoosa that will be run by CNE, and one right out here. The universal beds, that's an upgrade for our hospital, which will allow them to easily convert a room that's a standard kind of non-critical room, and they can, quote, flip it, and it can become an ICU type room with the requirements of the certain bed. And while we all know of the devastating effects of COVID on our physical health, I'm sure you've probably also heard of the other kind of fallout, I'll say, from COVID, and that is an increase in domestic violence, either partner abuse or child abuse. There's also been an increase in substance abuse, and it's taking a real toll on people's mental health, that's for sure. So one of the things that we did, because we saw the increase in the domestic abuse pretty acutely during that first sort of stay-at-home order, and so we acquired a building in Adair County that was already kind of, the shell of it, it had most of the makings of a large building with several smaller apartments in there, and that will be used for a domestic violence shelter because our demand for shelter has shot up since the pandemic started, unfortunately. And then the last thing on this one I'll talk about is that Mr. Michael Lynn with our Community Services Department has partnered with a lot of our communities to improve their water lines or water treatment systems in their towns. Because as you guys all know, water is critical anyway, but especially critical when, you know, the best way to prevent yourself from getting the virus is to wash your hands frequently. You definitely need a good source of clean water to do that. So we made some investments in our communities to help improve their water supply there. The next few slides are some more pictures again. And then we get to our employment/career support. This is run by Miss Diane Kelly, and they have taken $7.5 million of the Coronavirus Relief Fund to expand and increase their services. I will say that this is not the only funding that she got by any means. She got several other grants, so they've been extremely ramped up since the pandemic started, and they're doing a great job. But from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, she has $7.5 million, and this is really just it's a variety of things to either get people qualified or make people more marketable or try to help them with employment placement, because right now the unemployment rate is astronomical, and the job market is tough, to say the least. So the more advantages that we can give our citizens to become employed, the better. So we're putting a lot of effort forth on getting people training and such, so that they are the ones who are picked for those jobs who are few and far between. The next one is public health outreach. This one consists of a few different things. Obviously, the signage that you see everywhere and the stand this far apart and all that signage is not free. The design of those and the installation of that stuff. Then we have the sound stage, which is a Cherokee Nation asset, but it will be managed through an MOU by the Cherokee Nation Film Office. And that will allow us to do some really great things with both our language and our health messaging. In fact, they already have a few things slated to begin production, and they think the goal for the timeline is to have those out by the end of February. So messaging about the vaccine and how it works, how COVID is spread, the science kind of behind why we wear a mask, and with the technology that's offered at that facility, they can do some really great things. They can also do some really great things with language as well. And they can do it in a way that protects our elders, who are at risk while they're doing it. Then I think that brings us to our last one, which is, oh no, it's not our last one, sorry, it's housing. So we made a $7 million investment in housing, which again, this is not the only, COVID relief funding that the Housing Authority got. They had other sources as well, but from this fund, they got $7 million, which represented 2% of the fund in total, and that's where I'm sure you guys have heard of the efficient homes for elders. That's where that funding came from under this program. They've also done some replacement homes and a lot of emergency repairs. And they did heaters and air conditioners as well for elders or those who are at risk. And the premise behind that is, if your home is in need of a repair or you don't have an air conditioner or a heater, you're not very likely to stay at home and sort of self-quarantine as much as possible and protect yourself from the public. You're likely to have to go to a family member's house or something. So the more we could get out there and make those repairs, the more that our elders could stay at home. And we call it the Safe at Home program. And then the last one, and honestly, the only reason that this slide is on there is because it didn't fit anywhere else. So it's a very, very small amount, as you can see, but it's for the financial administration of these funds. So there are required audits on it, and we did use it for a cash match for a grant, which was allowable under the guidance. And then, of course, when we needed to reach out to legal or other consultants to make determinations about the spending, then that all comes out of that financial administration. So that is it.
So that will be a separate audit outside our regular audit that we have every year?
Yes and no. BKD will be one that audits it, and it will be, I'll say, kind of a limited audit because of the guidance, and it doesn't apply the entire uniform code to the uniform guidance to these funds. They're not considered a grant. They're considered other financial assistance, I believe. So the audit's kind of weird, but yes, BKD will have to go do above and beyond what they normally do. And Treasury has said that for those hours that we pay for the audit, that those can be paid for using the fund.
And will it be in our regular audit, will it be a separate addendum, or will it just most likely be like an item within the total audit?
It'll probably appear on our CFA, which is the audit of our federal
Yeah.
funding. So I'm sure it'll be its own item on the CFA.
A separate section?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I guess just a couple of comments. These are some excellent programs that we've done. I think they've helped a lot of people. I guess the one thing that I'm really, I don't want to say disappointed, but you know, we've talked about mental health in here for years and months, and I didn't see any funding set aside for mental health. I saw $2 million for domestic violence, which is badly needed, but I think everybody on this committee and this council has stressed enough about mental health and didn't see anything going to mental health. I'm sure there's a mechanism within these budgets that will take care of mental health, but I would like to have seen like $2 million set aside specifically for mental health. Of course, you can answer that here in a little bit, but the other thing, while I've got the floor, I didn't see anything in here as to the story that I told about the young man that had a business a while ago. Well, maybe that was just an oversight, but what am I going to tell him, that we can't help him?
You know, we chose not to go for the business assistance and helping businesses, but rather helping the individuals. So, like you said, those gentlemen that you were talking about, they could qualify for individual assistance under our emergency relief and some of the other programs, but you know, we just didn't go to the business side of it. Our focus was on the people, not the businesses.
Okay, well, that's one of the things that I'll tell him. You know, that's what we did, and that's what we have to abide by. And you hate to see this person lose a business that employs probably 7 or 8 full-blood Cherokee people that has a family to feed too. So, okay, that's fine. But the other thing, if you could address the mental health issue, I would like to hear the reasoning why we didn't have those funds in there.
So we did get some grant funding for that specifically, some additional grant funding for that specifically. So they did get to ramp up the mental health response through Cherokee Nation. And in fact, we just had a conversation about that 2 days ago, about the fact that, as you guys are probably aware, President Biden has proposed another economic relief package, and in that package, which may be the first time in history, but tribes got their own paragraph, which I was really excited about, and he's proposing that tribes get $20 billion. And just to put that in perspective, we received this $411 million off of an $8 billion set aside. So the $20 billion would be obviously more than double that. Now, I'm not saying that they'll use the same allocation method. I'm not saying that that's going to be the amount, put in there. There's negotiations to be done and everything. But, I do believe that we will probably get more funding, although I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how much that will be, but we did have the discussion just 2 days ago that if and when we get more funding, that is going to be a program that we do.
You bet. First off, Harley, I'm working on that also to help them guys. I got an idea, but and I want to piggyback off what Harley was talking about on mental health. It would even be helpful if we could maybe invest first off in maybe a 10-bed detox facility and then grow from there, and then maybe enter into another joint venture like we did with the big clinic out here. But I was just wondering if, since we could use some of these COVID funds for something like that, if that's something that maybe the next initiative is what we need to turn to, just to, really help out our folks with mental health issues.
I 100% agree with you, and I can tell you that Chief and the rest of the cabinet 100% agree with you, and that's
Good deal.
actually what we specifically talked about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of follow up with what both counselors said on, on mental health. Since we know about this $20 billion that's set aside for Native Americans, I think that we've had a lot of expenditures over the past, obviously, over the past 7 months with this COVID relief fund, or 8 months where we're at now. I think, those ideas that we had those council members come up with, just kind of maybe just recommendation to the council before we get this next money. If anyone's wanting to get together, I think it might be wise that we get together with these ideas that we write up and maybe work on them to suggest those to what we think they be appropriated for when we receive the next funding. So that way we don't miss any gaps to where we might see that some need to improve on where we need some more funding. And then the other thing I was going to ask, though, an itemized list of the economic relief program. Will we receive that, or do we need to request that?
An itemized list of which economic relief, wait.
Well, I mean, we're going through here and we're seeing, there's certain, 128 million sent to CNB. I know we have PPE, manufacturing equipment and materials. There's 21 million. Is there going to be an itemized list of, there was 25 million spent or 2 million spent for this inside of that, or is this all you're going to support us with is just I
can provide you with
spreadsheet.
a GL detail of the account. It'd be confidential. You'd have to request it under a GRA, the Government Records Act.
Okay, yeah, just so that way I could see where other money might have went, because I know we had some questions on some things. So, all right, perfect. That's all I needed to know, I think. And I'm just kind of going through my notes. There's a lot to go over, so may have additional questions for you in the future on it. But other than that, okay, appreciate it. I appreciate you.
My number's at the front of that report. So if you do have any questions, just feel free to call me anytime.
Thank you, Chair. Treyland, that's pretty impressive. It's pretty easy to follow, and it's a lot of work and a lot of thought has gone into producing this document, where to spend the money. I mean, I know that there's been I don't even know how you guys did it in the time frame. I know we got extended, but you've done a good job of helping our people, and you have. And I'll just say this about some of the money that goes back in our businesses. I am a big supporter of that. You know, our businesses for years have got us where we were financially. And it's only fair that we take care of them when they need help, because they have taken care of us the whole existence of their existence. They have taken care of us. And, you know, we had the opportunity to take care of them, and I think that's a great thing, because they have definitely taken care of us and taken care of our people. So I just want to thank you for this, and good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did find the question I was looking for. On our Cherokee Nation payroll account for 72 million, I know you said that quite a bit of that went for paying our health care. On those are jobs that are funded by the federal government that we're paying for out of CARES Act money, or is those, where else would they originally be paid for, I guess?
It's a variety of sources, but it was with our, typically it would be with our, you know, compact that we have with IHS. However, those funds don't expire, and they can be used for anything in health. So to the extent that we can, so when you have federal funding, you always, you know, use it on this sort of matrix of, you know, most restrictive, shortest time frame to least restrictive, longest time frame.
Right.
So when you're looking at that matrix, and because this is a health crisis, this is a health pandemic, you know, we thought that there was really no better use of those funds. That also frees up the other IHS funding that they would get, so that they can, you know, make other purchases and investments that they need in order to beef up their, you know, not only their COVID response, but, you know, just healthcare to the tribe in general.
Okay, so I guess it'd go back to the mental health question then, because if we had 88 million injected in it from IHS for COVID relief funds, and then now we had a lot of money that was budgeted for fiscal year 2021 to pay for those doctors and nurses and staff, but instead of paying them with IHS dollars, we paid for them with COVID-19 payroll. So we'll have a lot of extra carryover of IHS dollars. Is that not money that we then could reappropriate for a lot larger mental health program? I see that as being a big money pool that we're not using right now, that we could look at saying, hey, listen, we could inject 20 million right now to build a rehabilitation facility. I know that the Choctaws have done really well by building even houses to where when they're going, after they come out of, and I'll bring it up with our public health advisors later, but when you bring them out of detox, the rehabilitation's actually going through with their family, so they're not having to be disconnected from their family. It's just something that I had seen here, that if we were paying dollars with COVID money that we otherwise would have had to pay for from a budget in which we received money for them, IHS already, it's setting in a pool, and if you're saying we can use that for other things, that would be the money that we could look at and not even have to wait for the next COVID relief fund to go ahead and try to get that ramped up going.
We could. There's also other, you know, funding sources for that type of facility, and, you know, I'm always one to try to pull in more dollars than what we have currently. So, you know, right now our grants department is looking at those other funding sources. There's some money through DOJ, which, you know, could help in that situation as well, but.
Okay. I'm just kind of like a time of the essence thing, kind of like with the COVID. Right now, I've been that way since my family's come through the behavioral health issues, and the moment that I seen that there's some funds there in IHS that we don't have, normally would have had, I'm like, man, that's it, jump on it, try to go after it as soon as you can, because it's, mental health didn't decreasing at all, especially during the pandemic. It's only rising, and we lose a lot of people to it through bad, you know, problems that we also see domestic abuses and problems rise because of mental health. But that's something that I think is very, it just kind of hit me home whenever Counselor Buzzard mentioned that, and then I seen the funding. I was like, man, right there's some funding we could go ahead and jump on if we got to look at how much was said in there, so. But I think, Todd, you want to say something? I think you're sitting there.
If I may?
I mean, yeah, go ahead, I got the floor.
So, know that our health team, I've challenged most of our executive directors to say, we need to be thinking about those programs, those services, those projects that would be shovel-ready, that we're ready to start if we do get additional funding. And health has been reevaluating where they need to spend money related to this pandemic for the next year. And so they're already knee-deep into trying to determine what things need to be out there. And as Treasurer indicated, we did have quite a bit of discussion regarding families with special needs and circumstances, behavioral health. I had a very long conversation with some of Diane Kelly's staff, and Darrell will know very well with his time and work in there that some of the behavioral health and substance abuse challenges that people had overcome have resurfaced, and it's creating barriers to employment. And so there's a lot of things that we can work on. But the other thing I wanted to highlight is, health is facing a challenge. There's a nursing shortage across the United States, and the pay for nurses has gone out the roof. And there are hospitals and environments where they're paying PRN, locum tenens nurses to come in, and they are paying 3 times what they would normally get. And so it's creating a nursing shortage for us. And so that's one of the things we're going to have to look at and evaluate of being competitive, being responsible, but being competitive for salaries and making sure that we get the nurses and the staff to be able to, and the counselors to be able to operate and maintain a program to try and help those citizens. So, staffing is going to be a big challenge in the months and years to come, and find people that are qualified and licensed to be able to help out. So that's one of the things we're already looking at.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of moving pictures.
Yeah, and if there's any kind of advice, I mean, I personally wasn't as hands-on like my dad. He was a clinical director for 9 years whenever he opened up a mental health facility. But if there's any kind of opportunity we could jump in, I know it seems like there's a couple of council members who'd want to be looped in, and just kind of, however, I know that there's a lot of health directors and stuff that we don't want to take away too much of their time either from the pandemic, but it's definitely, that needs to be something that I would really like to help focus on. So, but I appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment, really. Traylon, I know you got kids like most of us do, and what a sacrifice. I mean, you have a job, but I know you went over and above, so it is appreciated. Like I say, anybody with a family, you got babies waiting on mama to get home, and Brandon's running around and just taking care of, I can't imagine, but thank you for that. I've been pleased so far. I'm a hardhead, but every time someone was needing food, we was able to get it to them. And, different needs, different ideas. I felt like you guys always had an ear for it. And we started with the elders, students, being a school teacher. I see it every day when them kids, some of them wouldn't have had a chance to get a laptop, man, they come in, they got stickers or names on them. I can't think of a better place to start and to get to where we're at now with, opening up human services thing for, the people can come in, and I just want to thank you and your staff, and pleased that you guys always have a open ear, and I thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I will, very quick. While we're dreaming, speaking of elders, assisted living, that we really need to look at assisted living at some point in time. That's a big deal. And another big deal, and the elders are in this too, is an APS program, Adult Protective Services. Because as they get older, they have problems, and right now we don't have one, but I'm just saying, while we're dreaming, while we're saying things, those are two really big things that could help our elders in the future.
Yeah. Again, you guys are hitting on a lot of things. I mean, I think we can all say that we're all in agreement here. I think the cabinet and council are all on the same page, which is great. That means we can move forward with a lot of these things. One thing that I failed to point out, I think, and you can go back and look at it at some point, on page 36 of that handout, there's a line item in there which is called short-term quarantine housing. And those are a form of that efficiency home, but they're quality materials. But they can actually be built sort of indoors, and they can be transported on a trailer and set. They're kind of a tiny home, if you will, if you kind of want to think of it that way. And we are going to put some of those clusters or villages, I guess, whatever you want to call it, around in some areas. We're working out those details. I think one of the areas is going to be that land in Sequoia that we purchased. But I think that something like that, Counselor, would be, if we could start that rolling and then possibly have, the trades program come in where they get experience in building them, and we can just keep that going and get more of those up. This is something that hopefully can go on past the pandemic, and I think that would be a great place for like a little elder village, and maybe have a medical professional that's at least there regularly. But I agree with you. I think that'd be a
That'd be
use of
awesome.
our funds.
Anybody else have anything to add? Okay. Very informative, Trey. We appreciate all the work. Let you
You're
get back
most
to it.
welcome. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us on to career services. Deborah, are you still there?
Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Tribal Council.
Hello?
Hello. So you have our report, and at this point, I'll just keep it short. Let's open it up for any questions that you might have.
Anybody have any, Counselor Austin?
Yes, Deborah. I attempted to log on to the Norris Summit earlier this week, and unsuccessfully. I guess I didn't successfully get registered is the problem. But I don't remember actually getting an invitation. It was something I saw through social media. So can you make sure that we get that so that we can get logged on?
Yes, we will. My partner here, Anna Knight, she is also, will make sure that you can get that.
Thank you.
Not speaking for Anna, but hey, that's her show, yeah.
Well, it's all teamwork.
Okay, Deborah, if you would just hang on the line in case anybody has questions about the tarot certifications, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and speaking of Anna Knight, who is on the call for Commerce? Anna is. How about that?
Yes, and we did send out an all-employee email about the Norris Summit, but I will make sure that you guys get specific information about it. And I do have the link that I can send you to the recorded video. I haven't watched it myself yet to make sure that it's good, but I will do that, and then I'll send that to you if you would like it. You do have a copy of my report, and I would only like to point out nothing on the report, but that the IRS with the tax preparation, that because of the stimulus checks and because of tax time, there's a lot of people that did not get the $600 stimulus check. So if you have constituents that bring this up to you, they now have to ask for it on their tax returns. And even if they don't normally prepare a tax return, that's still how they're going to get that stimulus if they haven't received it yet. And it's also, in case anyone talks, we will start tax preparation at the beginning of February, but the IRS has delayed the acceptance of tax returns till February 12th. So even people that come in ahead of time, we will help them with their preparation, but we will not be able to send their tax returns in until February 12th.
Counselor Buzzard has a question, Anna.
And I noticed on the tax return help that your people are doing, I noticed the time slots, well, especially in J, was 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and I don't remember if that was a time that was set aside last year or not, but what are we doing, or how can we help people that work from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock? Is there any consideration for those people?
One of the reasons why we do it in so many locations is that we can try to help as many people as we can, either through their lunch hours. And for those people that need evening appointments, then we make arrangements for them. We just don't publicize evening appointments.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Junior. Go.
And how are they going to prove that they didn't get their $600 when they come in?
Well, they will know if they don't have their $600, and so there's just going to be a line on the tax returns to request that credit. I'm trying to look at my email too to see what it's called. And so, and if they request it and they've already received it, the IRS isn't going to give it to them again.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Anna, I don't see anything else, so if anybody has any questions, they know where to find you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us down to the consent portion. The tarot certifications are in here.
Move for approval.
Got a motion and a second on the tarot certifications. All those in favor? Any opposition? Okay, very good. Community assistance, you got a new sheet handed out.
I do have some additions for Speaker Byrd under community assistance, 4 schools for $1,000 each, Briggs, Lowry, Tahlequah High School, and Grandview.
Does anybody have anything they need to get in this month? Excuse me. A frog in my throat. I have a motion and a second to approve the community assistance. All those in favor? Any opposition? Nope. Okay, law enforcement requests. There was also a new sheet on that.
I have one to add on law enforcement, Town of Concord for $5,000 for Counselor Shambaugh. And just kind of as an update, the motor vehicle tax funding will be coming through in the February executive in finance. Looks like the law enforcement funds are going to be $41,268 each this year. Wow. That's comparative to $42,622 last year. It's just slightly less. The gross motor vehicle tax is up, so the roads and the schools funding is going to be up a little bit. But the law enforcement is based on net, and with the additional expenses of the tag office and stuff this year, just slightly less for the law enforcement.
All right. The roads requests are the next. They're in your book. And I would entertain a motion to approve those. Motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposition? There was a new sports teams list handed out. Thank you, Kanan. Motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposition? Looks like there was, well, no, there's no new livestock, so we're just going to skip over that. Okay, under new business, Counselor Duncan, would you do 1 through 4? Those are resolutions. They're all donations. Counselor Duncan, would you do 2 through 4?
Okay, so, first one is a resolution authorizing Cherokee Nation Warehouse to donate surplus items to Native American Fellowship, Inc. And
Let's do
then,
them all 3 at once,
okay,
in toto.
make a motion that they be approved in toto.
Got a motion and a second for the 3 donations. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, Counselor Austin, would you take the budget, please?
Declaring an emergency, I put that in the form of a motion.
Got a motion and a second on the operating budget. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Question on that.
Okay.
We had, under our Supreme Court, we had, I know we had our adjustments on, pay raise for our Supreme Court justice. I know we had talked about that before. I was trying to look on the front sheet, did we have a calculation of where those adjustments came from or why they were asking for that much in increased funding? I mean, I know that they said they're gonna get new, is that, I guess I'm trying to find out, maybe we're gonna ask where we had the funding was
minute,
coming
Jody-
from.
Jody's
I'm
looking
sorry,
at
my
us.
book broke, that binder just blew out the back, so I'm trying to come through my notes here. And, where that funding is coming from to pay the Supreme Court justices? The increase in funding?
Make sure here. Yes, that's tribally funded.
Tribally funded, okay, I was just,
I think we're good.
it was from 30, or from 27 to 68, so. That's just for the, it's just for the Supreme Court. No, because this is Supreme Court justices.
Does it say justices?
It says justices on there. So we have you have our Chief Justice, which is 3 through 7, but then we have another Chief Justice from 8 through 12.
It says it's increases for the justices' positions.
So they'll go from 27 to 63 on their income.
Yeah. Yes. It's for the Supreme Court justices themselves, so.
Do they have, I guess, well, that's the thing I was gonna ask, but I don't see, where's the first page at?
There's a payroll worksheet behind the budget that has the,
Yeah, I'm trying to find where it went to, because I don't see our Supreme Court, our Chief Justice in. I was just gonna ask if he had anything on his dockets, kind of what's coming forward on what his increase of workload's gonna be. Just so that way we could,
We don't have the docket yet, 'cause we don't have the case, but it's gonna be a huge.
Significant.
okay, all right, perfect. I was just wanting to try to get that cleared up. Okay, all right, appreciate it, I guess. Thank you.
You get that answer?
Well, he's not here. I was just gonna look for the Chief Justice, and I can't remember who's up next since Wilcoxon's out. Who's the next Chief Justice? That's,
I'm not sure about the rotation.
Garrett, it's Garrett, isn't it?
He's the Chief Justice right now.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't know what the anticipation of their workload to reflect the increase in revenue.
Yeah. Don't they vote? Don't they vote for the Chief Justice?
No, it's every,
I mean, they just rotate it?
who's ever the
okay.
last one that's
Okay.
getting ready to come off.
The justice that's got the last 2 years to serve is the chief justice.
Okay.
The last 2 years of their time.
That's John Garrett, okay.
Okay, yeah, I was just looking for, I guess, supporting
His workload.
the workload. Yeah, where was the supporting workload that's gonna be on it? So, but I'm assuming that they are gonna have increased workload, so that's just what I was asking about.
Mostly district judges.
That's where I see that most of it's gonna be districts, so the Supreme Court asking for an increase in pay, I didn't know how much they were gonna be seeing. The district courts are gonna be where you're gonna have, they're gonna be slammed, so. Right. That's a big increase for a part-time justice. This doesn't turn them to a full-time, the increase in pay? They're not gonna be full-time employees, they'll still be part-time, right? But they're gonna be I guess it would've been wise to have our Chief Justice to answer those questions. So, just that increase in pay, if we had them here, we could have kind of asked them, I could have asked them these questions on what they're gonna have on the workload, so, but, they're not, so I'll inquire with him on what that is gonna be, so that way we have that. Oh,
That'd be a good time, wouldn't it?
I hope that never happens. What are you talking about? You'll catch me in Texas.
Okay, I'm not sure we voted on the budget mod.
We
All
didn't,
those
we
in
didn't. I
favor?
just stopped you before then, so, all right,
Any
appreciate it.
opposition? Okay, the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 25th at 3 p.m. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Good job.